When people talk about Watch Dogs 1, almost every discussion stays locked inside Chicago. But one of the most overlooked pieces of the game is actually the Pawnee CTOS substation, a remote, rundown outpost that ends up revealing one of the biggest secrets about Blume's surveillance network. Most players treat Pawnee as a side area, a weird, half-forgotten town, covered in conspiracy posters and abandoned cabins. But if you take a closer look at what's happening in that substation, you start to realize something surprising. Pawnee is the only place in Watch Dogs 1 where CTOS behaves like it's watching you back. As if the system isn't just running scripts, but evaluating you as a threat in real time. The Pawnee CTOS server is filled with corrupted data clusters, glitched camera feeds, and scrambled digital files that don't match anything you see in the rest of the game. It's almost like this one substation is trying to hide a mistake, something the system doesn't want you to see. When Aiden breaks into the core, the surveillance logs don't look like normal CTOS reports. Instead, they're storing strange behavioral recordings and fragmented psychological notes about people living in the area, including data that CTOS has no reason to collect. These aren't just criminal profiles, they're patterns, tracking paranoia, mental health, emotional reactions, and what locals believe about Blume. Pawnee becomes the only place where CTOS is clearly gathering non-criminal predictive data, testing how people respond to fear, rumor, and manipulation. This is important because in the main story, CTOS is always sold as a system that improves efficiency, fights crime, and keeps cities safe. But Pawnee exposes a darker truth. CTOS is actually conducting social experiments. The game never outright states it, but the evidence is everywhere. Abnormal analytics inside the substation, strange behavior from NPCs, and the fact that Pawnee is isolated enough for Blume to run a test without oversight. This is why the area feels off. The system isn't just monitoring, it's testing reactions, nudging people, and studying how misinformation spreads in a small community. There's also a detail most players miss. Pawnee's CTOS is older and more unstable than the Chicago network. That means this location was likely one of the earliest testing grounds for the entire CTOS project. Before Blume perfected their citywide system, they tried it in a place where no one would question glitches, unexplained outages, or sudden shifts in public behavior. And that lines up with the weird, almost surreal encounters you find scattered around the outskirts. People talking about the machines, others complaining about hallucination like radio interference, and townsfolk who already distrust outsiders before you even interact with them. What makes this even more unsettling is that nothing Aiden does in Pawnee officially appears in Blume's public logs. It's as if the company deliberately scrubbed the site from their internal records, pretending this early experiment never happened. And that's the real story hiding there. Pawnee wasn't just a secondary area. It was CTOS's first sandbox, a place where Blume learned how to manipulate an entire population long before the world ever heard of smart surveillance. The Chicago network didn't succeed because Blume was overlooked elements in Watch Dogs 1, and one that players use constantly without really thinking about it, is the CTOS profiler. It shows up the moment Aiden walks past his first NPC, and from then on it becomes a seamless part of how you play the game. But when you stop and look closely at what the profiler actually does, how much information it reveals, and the way it changes your behavior as a player, you start to understand that this feature isn't just a tool. It's a complete commentary on predictive data systems, privacy loss, and how modern surveillance shapes human judgment in real time. The profiler's biggest trick is how naturally it fits into the gameplay loop. You walk through a street and instantly see people's occupations, incomes, medical conditions, addictions, traumas, hobbies, and even secret crimes they've never been convicted of. It's not just data collection, it's data interpretation. The profiler isn't pulling public records, it's making algorithmic guesses. That's why some of the information feels oddly specific or invasive, like recently enrolled in anger management, diagnosed with PTSD, or suspected of tax fraud. These are the kinds of details no real-world system could legally expose in a casual street-level interface, but that's what makes it such a powerful piece of storytelling. It's showing you how much CTOS overreaches, how little oversight exists, and how normalized this invasive technology has become. What's interesting is how quickly the player accepts it. After only a few minutes, you stop reacting to the shock of seeing private data floating over everyone's head, and you start using it as a filter to decide who matters. The profiler subtly trains you to evaluate humans as data sets. If someone has a criminal record, you might tail them. If someone has a high bank account, you might hack them for cash. If someone seems tied to a potential crime, you intervene or ignore them based on the prediction model. So, even though Aiden Pierce is the one holding the phone, you are the one absorbing the COS's logic, reducing people to profiles, responding to numbers instead of personalities. The ethical twist is that the profiler isn't always right. Many of the NPCs flagged as potential criminals do nothing harmful if you don't tail them. And some criminals the profiler never warns you about commit violent acts without any predicted label. This quietly demonstrates the flaws of predictive policing: false positives, false negatives, and biases hidden inside an opaque system. The game never throws this in your face, but the examples are everywhere if you slow down and watch how NPCs behave. Sometimes the profiler will mark someone as a future victim, only for them to walk away without incident if you don't intervene. That means CTOS wasn't predicting anything, it was guessing. The profiler also reveals how deeply CTOS intrudes into personal life. You learn who's infertile, who's in debt, who's cheating on their partner, who's battling addiction, and who's sending money to relatives overseas. These aren't criminal flags, they're vulnerabilities, and once you see them listed so casually, it becomes clear how powerful a company like Blume is. If Aiden, one guy with a stolen access key, can see all this, imagine what the people running the system can do. They don't need force to control society when they can map every weakness, every fear, every secret.